Hey, it's you, man, from KC95 here. Good evening and welcome to Toasted Tavern. Your host, Scott Tobin, and the man called Wags are ready to bring you the night in sports. So pull up a stool, grab a drink, and let's get toasted.
Well, good evening and welcome into the Toasted Tavern. I am Michael Wagenknecht, and as you can see, Scott Tobin is not able to join tonight. He was enjoying himself at the lake this weekend, as a lot of people were doing this 4th of July weekend, and he is just getting back home safe and sound, so we want to make sure to say thank you for getting back home safe and sound, Scott, and cannot wait to have you back next week. But just because Scott's not here doesn't mean we can't sit around and talk about some sports that's going on in the area right now. Actually, a lot of stuff going on even as we speak. We've got the Cardinals and Cubs wrapping up their 3-game series. We've got the Gold Cup final, USA and Mexico, going on as well. It's a day that's chock full of sports news. We had a manager and a general manager fired in Major League Baseball, so tons of things going on. We'll talk a little bit about what is going on in the sports world. And yes, it'll probably be a bit of a shorter show since there's, you don't want to listen to me drone on for an hour. There's so much we can get to, and this may be a bit of a shorter show, but you know what? We're going to talk about it. And if you want to join us and put your thoughts in as the Cardinals are continuing to do battle here in the second inning, it's a 1-0 Cubs lead on a Pete Crow Armstrong single. You can join me, talk about this, gripe about them. You know, we've been talking about the last couple of weeks is kind of where this team has been at. Are they buyers? Are they sellers? Last week, we were like, yeah, this team, they're in a good position. They had a chance to make some hay in the NL Central and really solidify themselves as a potential buyer at the trade deadline. Well, after a week of almost not scoring any runs, has this kind of shifted back to the seller side of things. Hard to say because it still is just the early parts of July, and this team can go on a bit of a run considering they've got 2 very winnable series coming up before the All-Star break. So a shift to complete seller is still probably not on the table, but it also makes you question, where this team actually is. How much are they going to buy if they decide to do that at the deadline? So lots of things still up in the air, and with the injuries that have been going on as of late with this team, Lars Nootbaar dealing with his rib issue. He's in the lineup tonight. You got Nolan Arenado had a jammed finger, and now he's got a shoulder impingement. So it's kind of a weird time for this team, and the All-Star break couldn't come at a better time. Yes, they still have this game plus 6 more to go before they get to that point, but if they can kind of maintain and kind of tread water here a little bit before the All-Star break, then that would be okay by me. I think it would be nice to see them kind of hang within that 4 games back range if they're able to do that. Now, with Eric Fedde on the mound, it's not looking so good that they're going to even be able to win this game. I mean, it's bases loaded right now in the second inning, and they just went to commercial break on ESPN, so not entirely sure if that means Fedde is out because Ali just came out to the mound. So we'll see if there is a pitching change there. It looks like that might be the case, that Eric Fedde has only gone an inning and a third against this Cubs squad, especially with the heart of the lineup coming up right now. You got Kyle Tucker to the bat with the bases loaded. Even with the day off tomorrow, you got to sit there and maybe find a way to try and salvage a win. And I know if you win this game, you win the series. Can you really say salvage? I almost feel like you have to, because this team got bludgeoned on Friday. They had to come back again like they've done all year on Saturday and kind of rely on a guy that has burst onto the scene in a sense in those big moments to make it happen. And now you've got, the potential of going down big here in just the second inning. And that's kind of been the bugaboo for this team, is those big innings. You go back to this series against the Pirates, they offense failed to click. Andrew Heaney was flirting with a no-hitter in that one, but it was only a 1-0 game into the 5th inning, and then it was a 6-run explosion by the Pirates against Eric Fedde. That's what was kind of the difference in that game. They were in that game. If their offense would have been able to do something, they would have been able to possibly give Eric Fedde a little bit more of a leash or a little bit more confidence going into it. Because, looking at what Fedde has done this year, yeah, he hasn't won since May 9th. Okay. That's not good. You cannot go almost 2 months without a win and expect to be a reliable pitcher in a starting rotation. But for the most part, in his no decisions in the last 9 starts, he's only given up 5 earned runs. So it's not necessarily that he has pitched poorly. It's just that in some instances he has not had the run support. And yes, in the other games, those 5 losses in his last 9 starts, he's given up 22 earned runs. But how much of that is because he is walking that razor thin line of trying to be perfect because his offense isn't giving him any offensive support? And you look at that, and that could be the case. It's not the only argument. It's not the only excuse. But at the same time, you have to look at it and go, okay, maybe you can give him a little bit of respect in the fact that he's kept his team in games for the most part. But if you're going to be a top 2 or 3 pitcher in a rotation, you've got to be able to pitch in those games where you haven't got that run support. And in the last 9 games, that's just not been what Eric Fedde has done. He is out. John King is in now with the bases loaded up against Kyle Tucker. So, it's not looking good early on for the Cardinals in this one. And going back to that Pirates series, it was the offense that absolutely failed this team. They did not score a run in Pittsburgh in a 3-game series. I mean, that's just insane. And I get, the Paul Skeens matchup. Yes, that's going to be one of those that it's going to be low scoring regardless. And if you get shut out by a Paul Skeens, that happens. That's what he does. This team had him on the ropes a couple of different times in that game. They collected 5 hits against him. He walked a batter. They had runners in scoring position in that game. I mean, just running down in that top of the 3rd, they had the first 2 men on. No outs, a strikeout and a double play. Top 4, Contreras was hit. Gorman single. So again, 2 on, no out to start the inning. A pop-out bunt, a fly-out, and then Contreras was thrown out at home on a single. In the 7th, Fermin double. He moved up on a ground out, runner 90 feet away, but it was a strikeout and a ground out. And that was it. And then in the 9th, it was Fermin walking. Pozo doubled after an out. And then Fermin was tagged out on a fielder's choice, and you got Donovan striking out looking like the offense was just non-existent. And then in game 3, you got your ace on the mound. And yeah, you're going up against a Mitch Keller who has unfortunately kind of dominated you in his career, even though he's not been super stellar this year. He's been very, very good in 3 outings this year. Keller's 1-1. He's thrown 20 plus innings, given up just 3 earned runs in those. And that was in the 1 loss. It was 3 runs in that loss. In the other 2 games, he has not allowed a run. He's walked 5 and struck out 19. So the fact that this offense, even with the injuries, that hasn't been able to put anything together is very, very frustrating. And you're seeing it again here in this Cubs series too. In game 1, they were down, 7-0 after 3 innings. And yes, a lot of that is because, Miles Michaelis gave up 6 home runs in that outing. But at the same time, if your offense isn't doing anything, your pitching staff has to try to manufacture some excitement, something. And they just cannot find it because they don't have that rotation. Scott and I have talked about this the last couple of weeks too. It's the pitching staff hasn't been bad, but you do need somebody to come in to kind of maybe slot guys down just another rung to give them a little bit of a better matchup. And then you also have to go out there and look at who you can bring in to help this offense. Mo was talking today, that they're looking at, potentially a right-handed bat. Something we've talked about, a veteran that can come off the bench, play a couple of different positions and provide that power and that pop, which is what this team is lacking. They also have to, they do have to look at a pitcher. They got to find something to slot those guys down and maybe change up the eye line of opponents, because, when you've got Matthew Liberatore, who's pitching very, very well, and Sonny Gray up at the top of your rotation, that's a pretty good 1-2 punch. But I feel like if you could drop Liberatore maybe down to that 3 spot, at least this year, give him a little bit more favorable matchups, that might help. And then you can obviously slot everybody else down a rung as well. And if that means, jettisoning a Michaelis or a Fedde, that is what it is. I mean, you kind of almost have to in this instance. And after this performance by Fedde today, I don't see how he gets another start. I mean, I know there's the argument that this team is thin on pitching, even with the youngsters coming in. But I mean, at some point you gotta make the decision if you're going to try and go for something and how you're going to get to that spot. And that's going to be making a tough decision on removing one of those pitchers from the rotation. And the bullpen's been great. I mean, it's been very, very good. Yes, they've had some hiccups here and there, especially early on in the season, but they have been pretty reliable and pretty steadfast. And thinking, going into the trade deadline, you go, oh, well, that means, if this team is, maybe not out of it, maybe thinking they're sellers, let's get rid of these guys that are in the bullpen that can bring us return. Mo talked today, was very hesitant about potentially dealing one of those three guys in Matz, Maton, and Helsley. And, it's looking like it may not be something that happens. He may not move any of those guys. And again, if that means that he feels like this team can make a playoff push, then you have to go out and find something offensively to help this team, because you're going to waste those three guys at the back end of the bullpen. You're also going to waste their potential return if you don't fix this offense. And that's something they're going to have to think about. And you have to worry about the injuries and all of that stuff. But it's a very interesting time frame in Cardinal land right now, as Kyle Tucker did end up singling, driving in two. It's a 3-0 lead for the Cubs as we head into the third inning. Cardinals do have 2 hits. They have had a runner in scoring position each of the first 2 innings, but Matthew Boyd, it's a lefty. And if you know anything about the Cardinals, lefties just absolutely eat this team up, even when they stack a right-handed lineup out there. I don't know what it is. It's now 5 strikeouts on the evening for Boyd in his first 2 innings. So again, they can't solve these lefties, and it's a credit to Boyd. He's had a great season. He's an all-star. They just announced those today, the reserves, and he's one of them. And again, credit to him what he's done. You can't take anything away from his performance this year, but this Cardinals team needs to figure out how to hit left-handed pitching, because that was the bugaboo at the end of the 4-game set here in St. Louis. And it, again, is rearing its ugly head here tonight and really this weekend against the Cubs as well. So interesting time. The Cardinals will host the Washington Nationals and the Atlanta Braves this week at Busch Stadium. And Washington's coming in an interesting spot as well. They are last in the NL East. They just fired Davey Martinez and Mike Rizzo tonight. So this team is coming in with what's going to be brand new voice at the managerial level and in the front office. And it's pretty surprising they did this now, because it's only a week out until the Major League Baseball draft. And for Rizzo, been the GM there since 2006. So you're essentially getting ready to embark on the next part of this rebuild without essentially a voice. And in a week's time, you're going to make a decision that could potentially impact your franchise for the next 5 years. It's interesting timing for them, for sure. I mean, it had to be done. I mean, the Nationals are just, they're terrible, and they needed a change of direction. It's just intriguing how it was made at this point in time, right before the All-Star break, right before the draft. I mean, it's interesting timing for sure. And then you got the Braves coming in after that. They're just ahead of the Nationals in the NL East, although they have a little bit more positive offensive capabilities than Washington. And that should scare anybody that looks at this Cardinals rotation and goes, yeah, let's bring in a team that's hitting the ball right now, like the Pirates did. I mean, the Pirates are on a run offensively when the Cardinals visited them earlier last week, and you saw exactly how the pitching staff handled it. Not very well. Even Sonny Gray struggled. I mean, he gave up 4 runs in that final game against Pittsburgh. And back to that series, that's the first time the Pirates had thrown 3 shutouts in a series since October 2nd, 3rd, and 4th against, guess who? The Cardinals back in 1976. So Cardinals seem to be on the wrong end of things sometimes when it comes to records being set and broken. Obviously, the Cubs hit 8 home runs on Friday, which is another record for a franchise. It's not a good time to be a Cardinals fan right now. You've got 1 on and Mason Wynn up in the top of third. So the Cardinals try to chip away at the early Cubs lead. So we'll get off of the negativity of St. Louis sports right now. And we're going to talk a little bit more positive things going on in St. Louis sports. And it's a team that you don't necessarily know a whole lot about because they are a hidden gem in the St. Louis area. And I'm going to have a special guest coming on here to talk about that right now. But you got to talk about this St. Louis Slam team. It's women's tackle football. They are a multi-championship winning team here in the St. Louis area, and they get a chance to potentially put themselves back into a national title game coming up in about a week. They will be playing in the American Conference Championship on the 12th against the Minnesota Vixen, a team they played twice already this year and have beaten twice already this year. And you've seen this team a lot here on Livestream STL, and one of the voices that helps bring you those games is Mr. Livestream Ray Halbrook, joining us right now to talk about this St. Louis Slam team and about the broadcast that's going to be coming up here on July 12th. It's a big kind of banner thing for you guys as well, because you've been doing all the games this year, but it's going to be a different beast come July 12th.
Wags, it's great to be on here, man. I'll tell you what, we've been covering the St. Louis Slam for probably 3-4 years here. And, the first year they missed out on the playoffs. Second year they made it in and lost. Last year they win. This year is looking really good as well. So we are really excited about St. Louis Slam football. We call it the Slamily, and that's kind of cool. So, but yeah, lots of fun. And our first time taking a shot here, being on ESPN Plus too. I know that's something that you're used to, but we're not. So it's kind of fun to, check things out and see what this is going to be like.
Yeah, it's really cool that you're seeing the expansion of women's sports and the way that they put it out there. For the longest time, again, especially this league, it's been a lot of local coverage. It's kind of it's on the internet, but you have to know the local group that's covering it and all that kind of stuff. Now with this, it's on a much broader network and giving a lot of fans, not just here, but also in Minnesota and really across the country, because not all of these players are from this area. You're going to bring people in from other areas as well to play, and they're going to be able to watch these games and at a higher level as well. It's going to be really cool to see.
Yeah, I'll tell you, the Women's Football Alliance has been around for quite a while. Actually, if I remember right, and don't quote me on this, but I believe 2011 was the first season. It could be even earlier than that, but 2011 was when the Slam started. So it was actually started before that. But the Slam have won 5 of these national championships, and so not a bad track record to put that under under all their accolades. But to tell you the truth, man, it is a fun atmosphere. There are tons of folks out there. If you need to know where the games are always at, normally we play all our games out at St. Mary's in South City. And so they call that South Side down there. And it's a lot of fun. This isn't powder puff football, and this isn't the lingerie bowl. This is women's tackle football, and these ladies get after it. There's no doubt about it. Trust me. If you don't believe me, go over to our website, livestreamstl.tv, shameless plug, and we'll scroll down to the St. Louis Slam section and just check out a couple of those games. So lots of fun, but man, it would be so cool to see them back in there again. It looks like, again, third time around here for the Minnesota Vixens. Always a close game, usually. Always a fun game. Lots and lots of hitting. And so, it's really neat because there's like 3 tiers to this league. You have a pro division, which they're in, the Slam is, and then you have a Division 2, Division 3. So, like, if you're a first-year team coming in, what's nice is they put you down there in Division 3 to kind of get your bearings for a year or two, and then they move you up if you get good. And so it's been just been a really interesting and fun season, especially this season for the Slam.
Well, you look at that, and that's 100% something I did not know, is that they had the 3 different tiers,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been successful. Obviously, it's been around for a very, very long time. So you look at that yourself, and you see what the UFL has been doing and been trying to do the last couple of years. And, Scott and I have talked many times about how the UFL needs to embrace the fact that they are essentially the NFL minor league.
Right.
But is that something that, because of the track record and the success that they have had, especially in non-traditional football markets, is that an avenue that you would want to see other leagues kind of adopt? You see it with soccer, with regulation or
Sure.
relegation and all that stuff as well. It's worked with the Women's Football Alliance. Can it work with other leagues?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, because the UFL, the St. Louis Battlehawks here locally, have partnered with the St. Louis Slam, and they're doing some things from time to time, throughout the season. And both teams, they support each other extremely well and do a great job of, being there for each other. So I think that's been around for about a year or two. So, I'm a UFL, big fan, a season ticket holder of the Battlehawks. So lots of fun there, but, and they are exciting, and it's such a neat situation. But man, my 2 cents about that whole thing, I would love to see the NFL, kind of come and put their arm around the UFL and say, hey, could we work something out? Because it's not like they don't have the money to do it, and it's not like they wouldn't make more money eventually in the long run. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's one of those things. If you can print money, you're going to find a way to make it happen. So,
right.
But let's talk about the Slam, though. I mean,
sure.
Again, they're a team that a lot of people don't know about. So you've covered them, you've seen them play. Kind of pitch them to the fans out there about why they should be coming out there and what they're all about.
It's about dominance. They have dominated most games all season long, and it's just so fun to watch. Coach Quincy Davis over there with the Slam, he has got something going on there, and it's going to just continue for years and years. And we're even seeing, what's funny is we're even seeing, like, veterans that have been with the Slam, and these ladies, for the most part, they're not making a ton of money doing this. They're doing it because they love football. They're doing this because they love, the competition and whatnot. But it's, the cool part about it is, what you're going to see is you're not going to see, this to me is very college football style, to an extent. Lots of running the ball when they can. And it's a ton of fun, because if you don't have a good offensive line or a good defensive line, you are in trouble against the St. Louis Slam. There's a lot of up the middle, but there's also a lot of changing things up. And we've got some great receivers, got some great running backs, two, three great running backs. We've got one lady there, running back, Jada the Jet Humphrey. Shout out to her. She is amazing. Carrie McMahon, one of the greatest wide receivers that we've seen in quite a while. She actually last season was the MVP of the national championship, which, if they win this Saturday coming, they will go to the national championship. Both games this week and next week on ESPN Plus. This week, ESPN Plus and Livestream STL. So should be a lot of fun. Livestreamstl.tv, should say that on our website. But, Canton, Ohio is where they end up playing. And, it's at the Hall of Fame game. It's usually a few weeks before the actual Hall of Fame game, before the NFL gets in there. So they kind of christen that for each year. And it's a lot of fun, lots and lots of fun. And, it's an up and coming league as well. We've went from just having a handful of broadcast teams, start covering it. And now we're at the point now where we've got the All Women's Sports Network has jumped in this season. And, we've worked with us to get games and things like that. And they see the need for all of this exposure, because, if you don't get seen, you fizzle out. And they know that right now what it's going to take is going to take a ton of live stream games, a ton of exposure, doing whatever you can. We don't care if you get out there with a little iPhone and throw it up on on YouTube to start. It's a great start, but we're happy and just super blessed to be helping the St. Louis Slam, kind of see the evolution from them going to doing nothing to, the first year, like, oh my gosh, it's like TV, type thing. And we were on YouTube and Facebook and things like that. This season was the first season that we went full blown on TV, on internet TV, to livestreamstl.tv. and our Roku channel too as well. So lots of fun there.
Yeah, and you've got talk about the partnerships that are being built in women's sports. We've got the all women's sports bar that's going to be coming here very soon to the St. Louis area. I mean, the amount of support that women's sports gets in the St. Louis area, I think, is another one of those underrated things to look at. I mean, you see so much support, especially at the collegiate level. I mean, working at Lindenwood, the women's teams at Lindenwood with the transition to Division I, they have hit the ground running. I mean, they've got 2 conference championships in soccer and volleyball. Their beach volleyball team has been in the championship game and right there on the cusp this year as well. So like women's sports in the St. Louis area has just exploded. And we don't even have a WNBA team. We don't have a women's soccer team in the NWSL, but yet you look at that and the support that you guys are seeing with the Slam just shows you that not only can we support them, we can support some of the bigger programs as well.
Yeah, we may not have a WABA or NBA team, but we do have a WABA team. Yes. They're starting this week as well. This weekend, we had to choose, and it's like, do we want to be on ESPN Plus? Do we want to try to cover them both? Because one game's at like 2, 3 o'clock, the other game's at 6 or 7 o'clock, and there's not a lot of time in between. So we were like, sorry, man, but the WABA, the Midwest Sound, they're another team to be checking out there. They play their games up at, I believe that is Riverview Gardens this year. So lots of fun there too. And that's another one of those outlets. If you're a basketball freak and you love, good basketball, there's some good women's basketball right there at Riverview Gardens. You can check them out at wabasound.com, I believe is what that is. So, and we cover that as well over here on livestreamstl.tv.
I mean, you guys seem to cover everything right now.
We're trying. We've got one of the busiest weeks this week. It's so crazy. Tomorrow, you and I, we will go. Can I give the shameless plug?
Oh yeah. Okay. I've already posted about it.
All right, cool beans. You and I will be together, and I just don't feel like we're together enough. So and especially this week, I'm really dangling the carrot for you to be with us a little bit more. But no, seriously, the Metro Collegiate League. If you've never checked out the St. Louis Metro Collegiate Baseball League, lots of fun. It's basically summer ball for all the local college kids that don't want to travel. And there's about 6-7 teams that are involved with that particular league. Been around since 1979. No name drops here, but David Freese played in this league. Mark Mulder, I believe, played in this league. There's like 26, 27 players that have come out of the Metro Collegiate League that went on to do more and play Major League Baseball. But this is a great little league here that has been around for a really long time. But we're doing the All-Star game tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. So we'll be doing that live from Arsenal BG Park now. Is that what it's called?
Something like, I think it's something Arsenal like AG Park. Yeah,
BG Park. I don't know. It's the old GCS ballpark where the Gateway Grizzlies play. They still play there, but it's been renamed now. So there you go. But so we got that going on. We got a ton of American Legion baseball that we do throughout the week, and we're wrapping that up. Playoffs start this week. The gauntlet of American Legion baseball. This blows away, and I'm not joking. And I'll put my reputation on the line. This gauntlet of tournaments that these guys got to play. They have to play a district, which is usually about anywhere from 3 to 5, 7 teams in their area. Then you go outside of that and they take Missouri and they cut it into 4 different spots. You've got zone 1, 2, 3, 4. We are in zone 4. You've got to win out that district tournament, then the zone tournament. Everything's a double elimination. Okay. So you're playing a lot of baseball. After your zone tournament, that's just your area. Then you got to play a state tournament, and there's usually 4 or 6 teams in that. That's another double elimination team setup. You win that, then you get to play in a Mid-South region tournament, another double elimination team or tournament. If you win that, then you get to be on ESPN Plus and ESPN2 sometimes for the American Legion World Series, which is out in Shelby, North Carolina. So our first year doing our streaming, good buddy of mine, Jeff Whitener, Mr. Jeff, shout out to you, big boy. I was talking to him. We were on the fence on just taking the summer off. He goes, I think it's a big mistake. So this was 2019, and so we decided to take on this little team down to Festus, and Festus Post 253. And lo and behold, that particular year, they have this magical season where they end up going to the World Series. And they ended up taking like 7th overall out of like 1,700 teams. But it was just like unbelievable. And at that point, I was just kind of like, I think we're onto something here. And it's good baseball. It's there's a little bit of traveling here and there, but it's not like, and the other part about it, it's very affordable. If you've never checked out American Legion baseball, put it up against these travel teams, you're paying a heck of a lot less, and you're getting the same, if not better, baseball to me in the long run.
Well, and not only that, I mean, it's supported by the American Legion.
Yes.
I mean,
yes.
how do you not
Right.
want to take the pride of playing for a group like that with everything that they provided? I mean, I was able to work with you guys last year with some of this, and I was able to see that firsthand. I mean, they do everything possible to, make these players feel welcome, important, and they are. I mean,
Sure.
and these kids are continuing to grow in their baseball careers and in their lives. And it's not just about baseball; it's about
Right.
being raised as men and that mindset as well. I mean, you didn't hear. I don't think you heard any coach yell in any of the games that we called, and I'm sure you probably haven't heard any of the coaches yell as well. It's a different mindset, but you're getting a much better, like you said, a much better product, and some of these kids are dynamite. I was looking at the stats for some of the games coming up this week, and you see some of these ERAs, and you're like, okay, all right, I see how this is.
Yeah, it's quite something, and not to brag much, but I'm a American Legion fan. We've covered it all on all levels, as high as you can go and as low as you can go as far as these tournaments are going. So our second or third year, we got to go to the state tournament. That was a lot of fun. We did the very first professional live stream of the American Legion. I think it was like 2-3 years ago, and just lots of fun. The Mid-South Regional, the one that we were able to cover for Festus, that's a story that I'll have to sit down and tell you the story, but we were this close to not being able to do it. And I was able to pull it off. We were in the back with a generator and a wheel with mice on it running as much as we could to get things rolling, and it was just enough to get it done. But we got it done, and it was a great game. Amazing come from behind win for Festus, and they beat a team that I believe that they were out of Arkansas. They called themselves the Black Sox, which was kind of cool. Wore all black, really, really cool uniforms too. And so, but they were able to pull that off and come from behind and win that and go to the World Series. I think they won 1 or 2 games out of that whole tournament, because it was, you play until you lose 2 basically. So, but lots of fun. And again, the American Legion, to me, I feel like they're finally at a point where they're like, okay, we know that we've got to get some things going here, and they're starting to stream their games and things like that too. And it's just been a really neat evolution. There's a couple of professional groups besides us that do it as well, and Youth Baseball Midwest, they're on board with that as well. Lots of other really nice and awesome organizations. And I see Scott just jumped in here, and he's probably wanting to know, why in the world is Ray on? Hey, Scott, how you doing?
That's why I'm on, man. I couldn't miss. I'm good, Ray. That's why I'm here. I couldn't miss the opportunity to actually talk to you.
Hey, there you go. It's been a little while. It has been a little while. I mean, like maybe one of the last times I seen you was when we were producing you guys a little while ago. So that's pretty cool. So glad to see you're here, my friend.
Yeah. Sorry for being a little late. Traffic and weather didn't cooperate exactly on my way back home from the lake, but I'm glad I'm able to jump in and talk to you guys for a little while.
Awesome.
Yeah, we were just talking a little bit about the Slam and some of the stuff that's going on this week on livestream.stl.tv, and it's a busy week. And with all the negativity kind of going around in St. Louis sports, at least as far as the Cardinals are concerned, we figured let's talk about a team that has won some championships and is on a positive trajectory right now.
Give us some positivity, right?
So, well, Ray, I mean, thanks for hopping on, talking a little bit about that. Again, we'll put it back up on here Saturday, July 12th, 7 o'clock. Livestream STL.TV, ESPN Plus, the American Conference Championship, St. Louis Slam, Minnesota Vixen. It's going to be a fun one, and good luck with that.
Yes.
I know you and I are going to talk a little bit over the next couple of days about some things, so we'll definitely make sure that we get the production up and running for you guys, and then you and I will be together tomorrow, and we'll have some laughs, and we'll have lots of baseball the next couple of days.
There you go. I'll just say this: if the ESPN Plus game looks bad, it's not my fault. It's actually the ESPN's fault. So
it is. It always is. We blame everything on ESPN.
Yeah. So there you go. Appreciate you having me on. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Ray.
Hey.
So Ray Halbrook, Mr. Livestream, thanks for jumping on, talking a little bit about that. And Scott, welcome in. I know you were coming back from the lake, but I'm glad you were able to pop on for a few minutes. Unfortunately, the Cardinals not looking so good.
Yeah, I just saw the score as I was getting ready to jump on here with you. It's been a frustrating week for the Cardinals, but again, they're a little hamstrung, a little light in the lineup area right now with Nolan Arenado out and not having Jordan Walker or Ivan Herrera back. It kind of dampers what your offense is going to be able to do, and unfortunately, they're struggling a little bit right now.
Yeah, that they are. I mean, looking at it right now, I'm a little behind on it, but it's a 5-0, now 6-0 lead for the Cubs. A bit of an argument going on over at first base with an out. But I was talking a little bit about just kind of where this team is at. Transitioning. Last week we were talking about this team was probably an absolute buyer. They were coming off the sweep of the Guardians. Okay, dollar in the jar, and had a real opportunity with big time NL Central matchups coming up to kind of put themselves in a good position leading into the All-Star break. Well, then they go out blanked by the Pirates in 3 games. Michaelis goes out and just tosses up softballs for this team to hit out. Yes, they had the big win yesterday, but now we're seeing exactly what we saw on Friday with a pitcher that's unable to go out there and get the job done. Eric Fetty only an inning and a third today. So I touched on Fetty a little bit. He's had very, 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 very small amount of run support. In his last 9 games, looking at it, in his 4 no decisions, he's only allowed 5 earned runs. So it's not like he's pitched poorly throughout this 9-game stretch where he hasn't won. But at the same time, you have to look at it and go, at some point, they have to make a decision. Are they going to be able to make a decision of pulling him out of the rotation, or are you just going to have him go out every 5 days and just kind of work through it?
I don't know that you can. I mean, you're right. He hasn't gotten a lot of run support, but you look at how poorly he's pitched. This is 3 starts in a row now where he's actually absolutely gotten lit up. It hasn't gotten out of 4 innings now in 3 straight starts, and hasn't been competitive. I mean, by the 2nd or 3rd inning, the team has been out of the game because he's pitched so poorly. So, he's going to be 3-9 if he loses tonight. And his ERA is approaching 5 at this point. I think you have to look at pulling the plug, honestly. I mean, I know he's making $12 million, but that's prorated. You probably only owe him $3 or $4 million for the rest of the season. I think you really have to look at potentially taking him out of the rotation at this point and maybe giving Michael McGreevy that shot. And, you talked about the Cardinals struggling. The crazy thing is, even with all their struggles this week, they still have the 3rd wild card spot right now. They're still in the playoffs right now if the season ended right now. And again, you have to go back to the fact that you've got a bunch of people that are hurt. You can't really look at what they've done the last week when you're missing, 3 of your key parts of your offense. And then also Wilson Contreras is a little bit banged up, missed a couple of games, and he's not quite completely healthy with his hand after getting hit like 4 times last week in the hand. So, I mean, you have to kind of put all of those things together and say, is what we're seeing right now truly an example of what the Cardinals have been, or is this offense what we've seen for 75% of this first half of the season?
Yeah, that's really what it comes down to. And you and I talked last week about the fact that this team is probably going to need a bat from the trade deadline. And Mo kind of echoed that today. The mindset is that they're going to be buyers at the deadline. They're going to look for a right-handed bat. And, I was just kind of cruising through some of the guys that may be available. And we talked a little bit about Carlos Santana last week, a switch hitter that potentially could fill that gap. You brought up a name that we ended up couldn't figure out who it was that we were talking about, but you did figure it out later on in the week. A JD Martinez, a guy that, is kind of out of baseball right now, but has been always kind of linked to this Cardinals franchise the last handful of years. What about him really kind of makes you go, yeah, that's the guy that could really make a big difference in this lineup?
Well, he's just a professional hitter. He's been a professional hitter since pretty much day one in the major leagues. I shouldn't say that, because his first couple of years in Detroit, it took him a little while. But once he got acclimated to Major League Baseball and got things figured out, he has been a professional hitter ever since. He's a guy who's going to hit 270, 280. He's going to hit 25, 30 home runs, and he's going to drive home 100 runs every year if he's playing every day. I mean, that's just what he's done for the last decade, basically. And, even last year when the Mets brought him in late, he still, was their primary DH and still hit 16 or 17 home runs and had 75, 80 RBIs. So, I mean, he's a guy that I think you could bring him in and he would hit. He's not going to expect to play every day. Like you said, he's not on a roster right now, although I did see this week that the Rangers reached out to him to check on his interest in coming to Texas. So he is a guy that I think you could probably go get, and he'd be ready to hit right away, because I'm sure he's probably taking swings somewhere and keeping his bat sharp and his eye sharp, and is probably ready to go. Wouldn't take a whole lot to get him acclimated to Major League pitching again. So, I mean, just the fact that, like I said, he's a professional hitter, an RBI machine, and he's got lots of postseason experience. That's just that would be kind of the perfect thing to throw into this team right now. So that's a guy that I looked at. I mean, there are some other guys. What other names did you come up with?
So the only other one that I saw and that was like, that is interesting. I don't know if he'd be welcome back. I don't know if it's even in the Cardinals' plans, but we'll see him later this week. That's Marcell Ozuna from Atlanta. He's another name that could potentially be available at the deadline, especially with the way the Braves have struggled this year, obviously being in fourth in the NL East. But at the same time, he's unlike a JD Martinez. He's not necessarily consistent. And I think that's what this Cardinals team is looking for, is more of that consistency, a guy that can come up in those spots and make contact. And with Ozuna, he might be one of those guys that could provide the pop, but is he going to provide the contact consistently as well?
That's true. And he is an RBI machine as well. I mean, he's having a good year in Atlanta this year, even though they're struggling. I think, though, that he's another one of those guys that is still in enough of his prime left in his career that he's going to want to play every single day, which is something the Cardinals don't really have a spot for. The Cardinals need that guy who is content being, a couple times a week off the bench type guy. And I don't think Marcell would fill that spot. And I don't think he'd be happy doing that at this point.
Yeah. And that's kind of what I was thinking as well. I mean, it was a name that kind of popped out, but it's one of those that you look at and you go, you may have to sacrifice playing time for a guy that you really want to have in your lineup and want to have that experience in order to continue to grow, because it's a young outfield as well. And, again, dealing with injuries, Nootbaar had been out for a couple of games, but he's come back, maybe not as offensively gifted as he has been earlier this year. But to your point, though, because of where he's at in the lineup and the weight he has to pull because other guys are out of the lineup, that plays a part in it as well. So I don't want to see some of these younger guys get pulled from the lineup to put in a veteran that can help you, but is going to take away that time and that experience that you're hoping for the next 5 years will be beneficial versus trying to win now, because this team wasn't expected to make the playoffs. This team wasn't expected to challenge for anything. It's still probably not expected, but if you get there, it's great. I just don't see why they would want to sacrifice the next 5 years for a chance at sneaking in and maybe getting swept in the first round. Even though you get the experience for your young players, I think you're looking long-term, especially with the crossover of GMs as well.
Yeah, no, I don't think they'll do anything that jeopardizes the future or anything like that. It's going to be some veterans, some minor moves that they make at the trade deadline to try to add and try to make a push. And, unless there is, like we've talked about a couple of times in the last couple of weeks, unless you can find one of those younger guys, whether it be a position player or pitcher that you can bring in that would be here for the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, 100% agree on you with that. So another note, though, one positive, it is All-Star week coming up, and the All-Star rosters were announced. The rest of them were announced today. Cardinals did get one guy into the All-Star game, and one that's very, very much deserving. Brendan Donovan is the lone Cardinal representative, and you know what? It's well deserved. He's actually been on a bit of a tear recently. Definitely a deserved spot in there. And are you excited to see him in the All-Star game, or are you hoping maybe he accepts the honor but bows out to keep himself a little bit healthier?
And that could possibly happen. But yeah, he definitely deserves the recognition and the honor. And, good for him. Brendan is much deserved, and he's been kind of overlooked around baseball. So it's good to see him getting that recognition. A guy that people were talking about yesterday, maybe making the team. And it's hard for middle relievers to kind of get that spot. But a lot of people were talking yesterday that Phil Maton may be quoted or picked to be part of the All-Star team.
Yeah. Unfortunately, he wasn't, but he is definitely having a year that is very, very all-star worthy. I mean, you look at the record; it's 1-3. But for relievers, you can't look at the record. It's more about the body of work and what they do in pressure situations. And yeah, the last time that he was kind of out there in a big moment, he gave up the single run in that Paul Skeens game last week, but it was his first earned run in over 2 months when that happened. So. Yeah, definitely a guy that deserved it. And you know what? For the Cubs, and I know we talk about the Cardinals a lot here, but Seiya Suzuki didn't get nominated and didn't get picked for the All-Star game. He's one of the top hitters in baseball right now. So definitely some kind of big-time snubs here in the Midwest. And I'm a little shocked that Suzuki didn't get in. Now, the Cubs did get, 3 guys at least announced today that got in, including the starting pitcher today, who's continuing to carve up the Cardinals right now. But the fact that Suzuki didn't get in is a little bit of a surprise too.
It is. I was a little surprised when I heard that. He's had a really good year and had a couple of really good years now for the Cubs. But, every year there's 2 or 3 guys that you're like, man, how did that guy not get in? So, while they try to kind of change how they do the All-Star voting and all of those things, there's always a flaw, and there's always going to be a couple of guys that kind of fall through the cracks.
Oh yeah, you can't get them all in. I mean, that would just be insane. You basically have an argument for everybody at some point. So, and I know, everybody argues about the fan vote, about starters getting in and, all of that, but it is something that keeps fans invested. And even if your team is not playing very well, you can essentially stuff the ballot box and get some of those guys into the All-Star game. But at the same time, the managers know what they're doing as far as who they're picking. And it may even be just a conversation with the manager of the team that says, hey, we'd love him to be an all-star, but maybe don't pick him because we don't want him to have to travel and want him to rest for a couple of days.
Yeah, absolutely. There's some managers that are like that. They're like, man, I hope nobody on my team, even though they're deserving, I love it if my players didn't go just so they can rest and be ready for the second half. I do have a question for you, though. What does it say nationally about the fact that Mason Wynn wasn't even on the radar as far as shortstops in the National League going to the All-Star game? I know he wasn't even in the top 8 as far as fan voting at shortstop, and it sounds like he wasn't even in the top 10 in fan voting. So is it just the fact that the national media is not paying a whole lot of attention to the Cardinals right now, or are we more excited about Mason Wynn in St. Louis than they are nationally? Well, I know they are, but do you think he's more hyped locally? Do you think he's being overhyped in St. Louis compared to what national media and around the country actually think of him?
I mean, I don't think he's being overhyped here in the area because I think he is a highly skilled defensive shortstop. I think his offense, he burst onto the scene kind of last year and had a good offensive year, but this year he struggled a little bit. And I think you're starting to see that kind of be a bit of a negative for him right now, especially hitting in the second spot right now, not really getting on base and driving guys in. And he's had moments this year where he has done that. He's moved up and down the lineup a little bit. And it's just one of those things that it's a bit of a slump. I don't think he's overhyped here. In fact, I think Cardinals fans may be underhyping him a little bit. And I think part of that is just because of the way they feel about this franchise right now. And that's another reason why he's probably not top 8 or top 10, because no one's going to the games. So no one's voting. And because they're kind of out of sight, out of mind in a lot of cases, people just don't push him out there. Now, as far as national attention goes, yeah, I think he's underlooked. there are a lot of really good young shortstops in the league right now. So he's got to do something to stand out a little bit. And he had that a couple years ago in the Futures game with the throw he made from shortstop that was criticized by a certain former player. And that's what got his name out there a little bit. But since then, he hasn't really done anything that's wowed people. I mean, you look at some of the other shortstops in the league right now and what they're doing. He hasn't had that moment yet on the national stage. And I think once that happens, people will look at it and be like, okay, that's exactly what we saw in the minors. And that's why he deserves to be a little bit more lauded, but he just hasn't had that yet at the national level. And a game like tonight's not helping his case or anybody else's case on this Cardinals team about national attention.
No. And, that was, again, a Sunday night with Eric Fetty pitching, you didn't feel good about it. And then with the lineup that they put out there, it's not the best representation of what this ball club is on national television. Because if people are watching this team nationally and haven't seen them all year and are like, who's this Pozo guy hitting fifth in the lineup? That's not the typical Cardinal lineup that's out there tonight. You've got people all over the place that don't need to be out there, which I'm going to backtrack real quickly. I know there's a left-handed pitcher, but how, even though it's a left-handed pitcher, how is Nolan Gorman not in the lineup when you don't have Arenado, when you don't have, when you don't really have any power in that lineup now, and as hot as Gorman has been, why not give him the shot to go up against the left-handed pitcher? Because we've seen him hit home runs off of left-handed pitchers the last couple of years when you've given him the opportunity. You keep letting Burleson do it. Burleson was struggling against left-handed pitching. You keep letting him play, and hey, wow, all of a sudden you realize, hey, he can hit left-handed pitching too. I don't think there's any reason to think that Gorman can't do it if you keep giving him the opportunity. And especially, he might go out there and strike out 4 times, and then the 5th time he comes to the bat, he hits a 500-foot home run. He's just got that kind of a threat. He really does. He can do some special things. So I just don't understand it.
Especially with the day off tomorrow as well. If you were worried about overplaying him or anything like that, that doesn't come into the mindset when you have a day off tomorrow. Like this is a moment you're in a marquee matchup against your rival. You gotta throw every bullet you've got out there, especially considering you just won a game yesterday in very dramatic and emotional fashion. You've got to be able to take that, bottle it, and go out there the next day and try to put some of that back out there, especially knowing you've got a guy on the mound that you're not 100% sure on. Give him as many options as possible to have the offense click. And you've got some of the most light-hitting guys on this team in that lineup. No offense to Garrett Hampson, but he's not a major league starter. He is a guy that will be in as a defensive replacement, and he will maybe catch a ball that a guy doesn't catch in right left field in one of the games. But to have him be one of your starters consistently right now, even with the injuries, you've got to make something happen. Brendan Donovan can play the outfield, so you don't necessarily want to put him out there if you can help it, but he can play the outfield. Gorman can play second base. You've got power threat in the lineup, and instead you're going up and you're saying, here you go, Mr. Boyd. Just throw off-speed stuff, and you're going to cruise to this lineup.
Yeah, and the fact that Sajesi's really not hit since he had 2 hits yesterday, but he's now 2 for 19 since you brought him up this time and really struggling at the plate. So having him in the lineup's not helping anything right now either. So, it's just kind of a tough stretch to go through, and it's frustrating because we've seen this team. It's been like the last 2 weeks now. You've seen this team just about ready to take off, and then 2 or 3 people get hurt. We saw it a couple of weeks ago against the Cubs, actually, in the middle of that series, when Newbar and Jordan Walker went down, and then we saw him go through a little lull. Then you see him kind of bounce back, and you sweep the Indians. Well, then Arenado goes down, and Contreras is kind of hurt a little bit, and Newbar kind of re-injures himself. And it's like, man, then you've got all these guys in there again, and you're back to not being able to score runs because you have no real threat in that lineup. No offense to Alec Burleson, who's done a great job, but he's not really the biggest threat. He's not going to scare a whole lot of pitchers yet just because he doesn't have that reputation, and like we said earlier, Wilson's kind of struggling a little bit at the plate too, just because, his hand's probably not 100% healthy because he has taken like 4 pitches off the wrist. Although the 5 seconds of the game I saw today, He actually absolutely smoked the ball into left center field. I think he hit it 105 miles an hour, but unfortunately the wind was blowing in, so it was caught at the wall. It would have made the game 3-2 at that point. But I think they said the catch percentage on that ball was like 4% or something when it came off the bat. But the wind just absolutely killed it.
Yeah, yesterday was the only day I think the wind was blowing out at Wrigley this weekend. So, and taking away, and this will be the kind of the final note on the Cardinals before we talk a little bit about the Blues and about the NBA, because there was a big trade that was completed today. But outside of yesterday's 8 runs that they scored, the other 5 games they played since our last show, Cardinals have scored a total of 3 runs. They were swept by the Pirates. They were shut out by the Pirates. And I mentioned it at the start of the show. First time that the Pirates had thrown 3 consecutive shutouts in a series since 1976. Do you know who they did that against?
No idea.
The Cardinals. Of course, right? Of course. And then they got the 3 runs on Friday, 2 of them being late in that 9th inning. So, again, it's been a struggle for the offense, but at the same time, the injuries have kind of played a factor. So right now it's 9-0 Cubs. We're done watching this game. We'll reset for the Washington series, who are coming in with a new manager and a new GM, as Rizzo and Martinez were fired today as well. So that was big news, and just wanted to get your quick reaction on that before we talk about the Blues.
A little surprising, especially at this point of the year, a week before the draft, that you would make that kind of a move. Yeah, a little surprising, but the Nationals are trying to rebuild and have some young talent, so they're trying to kind of refresh that organization. One last Cardinal note, real quick, and then we're done. Can we stop playing Sunday Night Baseball this year? The 2 Sunday night games, they lost in Boston, that horrible game Michaelis had, that it was 16-5 or whatever that game was, and then tonight.
Terrible.
So let's not do Sunday Night Baseball again this year.
They just never seem to play well on national television. Although, I don't know what it is. When you combine Wrigley Field and national television, it never ever goes the Cardinals' way. So yeah, let's stay off of national broadcast. I know we got to go back to Wrigley one more time this year, but after that, I don't want to see Wrigley more than 3 more times this year. I'm fine with that. Even if we make the playoffs, I don't want to see Wrigley in the playoffs at all.
No,
I
agree.
Let's switch over to the Blues real quick. Free agency opened last week, prospect camp as well. And a lot of people were interested to see how this Blues team was going to handle free agency, but I don't think they expected what happened when the first real move for this team came about. Zach Bolduc got traded to Montreal for defenseman Logan Mailloux. And it's a defenseman that's young, that hasn't had a whole lot of experience in the NHL. In fact, last year he played 7 games with Montreal, and that was it. I mean, he's been an AHL guy the last 2 years. Been very good down at the AHL level. He's been in a little bit of an offensive-minded defenseman as well, but you look at the season that Bolduc had this past year, the 17th overall pick back in 2021, and with the lack of offense sometime that this team has, and the fact that they need young scorers, that shipping him out was a bit of a big shock to this team. But at the same time, this is a kid that is very likely going to be a top 6 forward at some point, and there's no pathway for him to be a top 6 forward here on this team for the next handful of years. So actually may have been probably the smartest move for Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, it was probably, like you just said, it might have been the best move for Bolduc, just because it's going to give him more of an opportunity to move up on the lines and play a bigger role there than he probably would have had here the next couple of years. And it's just one of those trades we're going to have to wait a year or two and see how it plays out, before we can really grade it and say it was a win or a loss, I think.
Yeah, 100%. And again, young defensemen take a while to develop. You're not sure exactly what you're going to get, but it does provide them youth on the blue line, which is something that this team hasn't had the last couple of years. You're starting to see guys like a Tyler Tucker start to make an impact. Philip Broberg is young. Now you throw a guy like Mailloux out there, who is right now not necessarily guaranteed a spot in the top 6 defense, but has the real chance to be a guy that starts the season in one of the top couple of pairings. But it's good to see that they're able to get somebody young into this team defensively that can potentially help them out as well. And that's not the only young defenseman that this team is targeting either. And nothing has really transpired around this yet, but there's still lots of smoke around this Bowen Byram out of Buffalo. Today he declined arbitration, but Buffalo did want to go to arbitration with him. So what was being rumored about offer sheet being done for him, whether it's the Blues or another team, that's now off the table because he cannot be offer sheeted now. The possibility of a sign and trade is still out there. It's real interesting for a guy that's the former 4th overall pick. He was in Colorado, had a pretty good couple seasons with the Avalanche, and then has been shipped to Buffalo, has dealt with concussions. But he's an offensive-minded young defenseman who has struggled to play defense the last couple of years, but he has also been playing on one of the worst teams in the NHL. If Doug Armstrong is able to pull off a deal to bring him in as well, and it may take a Jake Neighbors, which that one scares me just a little bit more than a Zach Bolduc. If he's able to bring in another young defenseman in what is possibly, and I think it is Doug Armstrong's going to be his last year as the GM before Alex Steen takes over, does that deal solidify Doug Armstrong as one of the greatest GMs in St. Louis sports history?
I mean, I think it comes down to, what you have to give up to do that. I mean, how big is that package that you have to offer to make that deal work? And then again, you said offensive-minded defenseman who's struggled defensively. If you go get him, is he able to play defense? Because if you have an offensive-minded defenseman that can't play defense, does that really help your team all that much at this point?
Yeah, it's one of those things. Again, you have to look and see where he's played at. Was the lack of good defense because he played in Buffalo, or is it because of stylistic play and mindset? So getting him in here and seeing what he can do would be interesting to see. But again, it's all about the return for Buffalo. What are they going to get now? Again, Jake Neighbors has been floated out there talking with our buddy Mason. He's like dead set on setting a trade around Toropchenko, which again, that's another one that I'm like, oh man, I know he's a 4th liner, but hard guy to get rid of. But if you can get a guy that is the former 4th overall pick with a deal centered around a guy like Toropchenko, who's a 4th liner, that actually might be something that's palatable and maybe another fleecing by Doug Armstrong.
Yeah, again, it would be another trade that we would have to wait and just see how it played out to see, because the fact that he was a 4th, I mean, yeah, it's awesome to say, hey, he was a former 4th overall pick. But the fact that he's a former 4th overall pick, that this would be his 3rd team already, does that make you go, that kind of worries me as well?
Yes, yeah. There are so many different pieces to this. He wants possibly $9 million a year. So are you going to do that on potential? So many different pieces go into this. And this is only the first week of free agency. We just had prospects in here and training camp's still a ways off. And yet we're sitting here, going, oh man, blockbuster trade potentially happening. I will say this though. We knew about the smoke around Ryan O'Reilly before that deal happened with Buffalo. And before that deal happened, Doug Armstrong was like, we're done. We're set with this team, blah, 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 blah. And then they dropped the deal for O'Reilly, shortly after that. And it's a hell of a deal for the Blues. At the end of prospect camp, he said the same exact thing about this team. Hey, we're happy with where we're at. We've signed a couple of guys, Nick Bukestad and P.S. Suter. We're fine with where this team is at. And when you hear Doug Armstrong say that, you're expecting the other shoe to drop just a few days later. So while nothing has actually happened and nothing seems to be necessarily on the horizon, the fact that he said that makes so many people go, it's coming.
So basically, you're kind of telling me it's like in 2021 when John Mozeliak looked at the media and said, hey, we're happy to have Matt Carpenter be our starting 3rd baseman. And then like a week later, Nolan Arenado was here.
Yeah, pretty much. But to be fair, we facilitated that trade. We made sure that happened. So
we did.
If I don't know if we're as high on Byram as we are on what Nolan Arenado can bring to this team. But if we need to make shirts and we need to start a campaign, you know what? I'm here for it.
We're always good to make shirts and start some drama, right?
Of course, 100%, 100%. Now, speaking of drama, and again, say what you will about this person, but somebody that has created drama in the past in the NBA is on the move. We talked about it. I believe it was last week, maybe it been the week before, but the deal actually was just completed today, and it went from being just a simple trade between two teams to being the first of its kind in NBA history, and the first time I think maybe in any sport that we've had this many teams involved in a deal. We had a 7-team deal completed today in the NBA, and it all centered around Kevin Durant. I know you didn't get a chance to really dig deep into it, but just your initial thoughts on the complexity of a trade like that.
I mean, how long did they have to be working on that to get 7 teams to agree on the players and the money and everything that went draft picks and everything that went into that? I mean, that's just absolutely crazy. And I don't think we've seen anything close to that in any professional sport before.
Not only that, I mean, you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of the players that are involved in this deal were draft picks in this draft. So that tells you all you need to know about how hard it probably was to make and maneuver all of this stuff.
Oh yeah, it had to have been. I mean, they had to have been working on this I guess you couldn't totally be working on it until you knew for sure who was going to draft who, where, and what. But I would imagine that the framework on this thing has been in the works for a while. I don't think it's something that, like last week, they're like, hey, let's pull off a 7-team trade for 35 players and see what happens. Again, just a huge move starting the NBA trade deadline, free agency period, and everything that's going on in the NBA. And as big of the news as the Kevin Durant trade, have you seen the rumors starting to percolate that LeBron could be a Dallas Maverick?
Oh, God, I thought we were going to do a whole show without talking about LeBron James. No, I have not seen that. And why? And on both sides, why would LeBron go to Dallas? And why would Dallas want to bring in LeBron? They're not close.
LeBron and Kyrie want to play together again. It worked out so well the last time.
Yeah, that was what? A half a decade ago, and they actually had knees.
Yeah, as crazy as it's been almost a full decade, which is unbelievable to think about. But yeah, that was some speculation. I mean, Dallas said it would have to be kind of a buyout, and then Lakers would have to buy him out, and they'd work out the money and whatever. And somebody said, "Well, is Bronny included in this deal?" Bronny, you can't leave Bronny in LA by himself. Poor kid, nobody will ever see him again. The poor kid will be so buried on the bench.
Well, is this a ploy by Dallas to go, hey, LA, you owe us. We traded you Luka.
Yeah, I think it's the new ownership group in LA going, hey, I don't care where you go, just get the hell out of here.
It very well could be. I mean, with the drama that has surrounded him and his tenure with the Lakers, it doesn't seem like it's out of the realm of possibilities. Now, Jeannie Buss is still, in fact, kind of in charge as GM, but when the majority owner says to jump, you don't say, no, I'm good. You're going to ask how high. And if that ownership group says, look, we want to totally rebrand, then yeah, that might be what the outcome ends up being. But that was kind of totally unexpected for me to hear.
Yeah, and I think that's what it is. I think the Lakers want to rebrand and they want to build around Luka and kind of clear the slate. And I mean, if your new ownership and Jeannie Buss is talking to you, she's probably like, get LeBron out of here. He's been a headache for the last 5 years. I don't want to deal with him anymore. He thinks he's the GM as it is. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see what happens, but it would not shock me if he goes somewhere else again, which, I mean, does anybody really even care at this point?
No, not really. I mean, I'm ready for it to be over and not have to hear the name LeBron anytime soon. And again, I preface this with all respect to the person. I don't dislike LeBron as a person. I just am not a fan of him as a basketball player. And that's just kind of how it's been for me since he came into the league. Again, nothing against him. It's just the basketball player. I've just never been a fan of. So I definitely want to preface that with the negativity that I push that way. It's about the basketball player. It's about him. And we talked a little bit about this with Kevin Durant when the trade dropped initially, about he was a guy that when he came into the league, everybody's like, yeah, this is a great basketball player, blah 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 blah. The shine's kind of gone off on him as well, and a lot of people are not so keen on him continuing his career. But you look at his numbers, and for Houston, they're looking at him as being like the last piece to the puzzle. I mean, this is a team that had their first 50-win season since 18-19, and Durant has been spectacular offensively the last handful of years. He's averaged 25 points per game in the last 16 seasons. The only player in NBA history to average that amount of points for 4 different franchises. So he can still go out there and put up points. So with this move, does Houston kind of put themselves at the top of the table out there in the West now?
I don't think so. Because I don't think at this point in his career, Kevin Durant's the guy. I mean, I know Houston's got a lot of talent around him. I don't think Kevin Durant at this point, though, is the guy that can take over a basketball game anymore. I think he needs that supporting cast, but at the same time, I don't think his ego is going to allow that to happen. I don't know that he's that great in the clubhouse or in the locker room, I should say. We're talking basketball, the locker room. And then the other thing, he might score 25 points a game, but he plays absolutely no defense. So what's the guy on the opposing team that he's guarding averaging a game? I mean, that's the thing. Houston kind of built their reputation last year on being really tough defensively, and they traded a couple of their really good bench defensive guys in this Kevin Durant trade. So you got rid of some of their toughness and some of their durability off the bench. Plus, you added a guy who doesn't play defense at all. So now you possibly have weakened your biggest strength, and then also brought in a head case on offense that may not fit in.
Yeah, I mean that's 100%. I mean, it's the risk that they're taking. They're saying, look, we're going to sacrifice this defense to try and put more points on the board, and maybe that gets them there. But I'm kind of the same way in it. I looked at it when the trade dropped, and I was like, why? Like, you were second in the West, you were a 50-win team. You just weren't there totally yet. Was it offense that prevented you from getting that to the next level? Possibly, but you needed to be able to add offense without subtracting as much defense as they subtracted. And I think that's really what it comes down to, is they sacrificed too much for something that they thought they needed. And again, it could be proven wrong next year. They could just go out, absolutely dominate the NBA and go on a title run, and Durant picks up his 3rd championship and says, okay, that's it, I'm done. That could happen as well. But with what we saw with Oklahoma City and Indiana this year, and I know Indiana is going to be probably not where they want to be because of the Halliburton injury, but you're seeing that style of play being the play that's probably going to be the next generation of NBA basketball. And I don't think Houston is going to have that with Durant on that team.
Well, and you know how they say that the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result? Does Houston not remember when they did this like 10 years ago and brought in James Harden? Because it's almost the exact same thing.
Yeah, 100%. It is exactly what it is. You sacrifice defense for potential offense. And yeah, you had some franchise-setting games as far as points scored are concerned, but you had to score that many just to stay in the game, not let alone win the game. So I feel like you're going to see more of that this upcoming year as well.
Yeah. And Harden was really good during the regular season. He could score all kinds of points. He just forgot how to score and wouldn't even shoot in the postseason.
Well, it's almost like teams didn't play as tight of defense in the regular season as they did in the postseason when every win mattered. Weird how that works.
Weird how that works.
Oh boy. Well, I know you just got back from the lake, and definitely happy that you were able to hop on and talk sports, but I gotta make sure you get to decompress and get ready for the week that is, because you're going to be busy at the ballpark all week long. But tell us, what you got going on outside of the Cardinals games, and what we can expect from Busch Stadium this week.
This week is going to be busy ballpark because it's the last week before the All-Star break. So you've got the Nationals coming in on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. You've got the Braves over the weekend. It's going to be a really important stretch, as we know that Chicago didn't go well this weekend. So you really need to win these games, finish strong this first half of the season, and kind of set the tone for what's to come in the second half, especially with the good report that the Cardinals had over the weekend is that Jordan Walker is close and could be back this week. And Ivan Herrera is making really good progress and should definitely be back post All-Star break. So those are two big bats and big pieces of good news that the Cardinals desperately need offensively. So hopefully you can go in, have a good week. Hopefully, Washington's going to be kind of in turmoil coming in this week. So hopefully you can take advantage of that a little bit. Hopefully they don't get that new manager inspiration and get really hot for 3 days in St. Louis. And then the Braves are kind of struggling. So we just got to hope that pitching goes well. But yeah, that's going to be my week. I've got 7 really, really busy days at the ballpark doing all of my jobs to try to get everything done before the All-Star break, before I take a little siesta from the ballpark for a couple of weeks and do some baseball broadcasting myself during the summer. So doing some things coming up. So yeah, that's me. I know you and Ray were kind of talking about it. We're running through again what you've got going on this week.
Yeah, so tomorrow's the St. Louis Metro Collegiate All-Star Game over at the Grizzlies ballpark. So we'll have that for you at 6 o'clock on live stream, stl.tv. And then on Tuesday, got a doubleheader in the American Legion games. We've got DeSoto and Rock playing, and then the winner of that will play Festus. So we got those games on Tuesday, and we'll crown a District 13 champion. And then after that, my week calling is kind of done, but it's still, getting into the start of getting ready for next season of fall sports over at Lindenwood. So we're going to be starting to put together different packages and start building things for things that are going to start mid-August. I mean, soccer starts mid-August, and before you know it, the summer's over and you're back into fall sports.
Yeah, football starts in mid-August.
Yeah. No, actually, we get an NFL game at the end of the month, don't we? Hall of Fame game.
End of the month or very first couple of days of August. Yeah, it's right around the corner. Training camp kicks into full gear in a couple of weeks, and yeah, we're almost into the beginning of football season, which is crazy.
Yeah, I'm ready to start making picks again. You know what? I mean, I'm ready. I'm ready for football, and I know I say that being a fan of a team that no longer exists here, and I'm ready for football. I gotta say, I know that NFL's done us dirty twice, but I'm hooked.
Oh yeah. No, I'm looking forward to it. This NFL season is going to be great. And we've said that for the last couple of years, but I think with the players that have moved and the different things that are going on in the league and what's going to happen in training camp in the next couple of weeks, and we could see a couple of blockbuster trades still happen in training camp because there are some unhappy players, especially there's some big name defensive players that are out there. I mean, think about that. Probably 3 of the top 4 defensive players in the league all set out mini camp. All aren't happy with contracts and all could move. I mean, when you think about Micah Parsons, Trey Hendrickson, and TJ Watt, all 3 of those guys could be on different teams by the time the season starts.
That's absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy. And we still haven't really gotten a resolution to the Kansas City thing as well with the Chiefs and the Royals. So that's another thing to keep an eye on as well. So plenty of stuff to talk about, and we will be back and doing that every week here on live stream, stl.tv. And as we say that, the Cubs continue to score. They've scored in every single inning so far against the Cardinals. It's 11-0 in the bottom of the 5th. So, time to put the nightcap on and head to bed because the Cardinals ain't coming back. And when you wake up tomorrow, who knows what the final score is going to be. So that's going to do it for us, though. I want to thank you for joining us. Thank Ray Halberg for jumping on, talking a little bit about the St. Louis Slam, the big-time broadcast they have coming up on July 12th. Make sure you tune in for that one. For Scott, thanks again for hopping on after getting back from the lake. Hope you had a nice 4th of July weekend. I mean, it was perfect weather. You couldn't have asked for much more than that.
No, it was a beautiful weekend. It is the best holiday weather weekend at the Lake of the Ozarks I can remember in a long time because normally it rains at least a couple of times. And we did get a quick little shower last night around dark. But other than that, it was beautiful. The sun was out all weekend, and it was warm, but there was no humidity. It was just a perfect weekend to be out on the water. So had a really nice weekend.
And it's very rare that you have a 4th of July weekend with the 4th being on a Friday. So to have that with great weather, I mean, America. Yay. Outside of this other stuff going on, the weather and the celebration was great. We'll just leave it at that. So, again, thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you guys next week right here on the Toasted Tavern. Stick to our social media pages throughout the week for all the other announcements that are coming your way, including potentially some interviews that we've got coming up and other things that are on the horizon. So, for Scott Tobin, I'm Michael Wagenknecht. Thank you again for joining us. We will see you guys next week here on the Tavern.